Assalamu alaikum. It's nice to follow somebody as eminent as Shabash, particularly when they've talked about a subject, one that as an individual I'm very passionate about, but secondly that fits perfectly into my presentation and to what I'm going to talk about. As we've already said in the introductions, I'm Velosi's HSE manager. I'm not going to go into a great deal of spiel about what Velosi does as an organisation. We're a third-party certification company. We offer a whole range of engineering health and safety services. Today is about health and safety. What today is about is improving health and safety performance and how we might achieve that. And I think it's very clear to us all, without question, that the reasons why we need to improve health and safety performance are very, very well known. And I think today's newspaper highlighted that even more so, with the story that was in yesterday's newspaper and again today of 3 individuals that unfortunately lost their lives when entering into a manor. And for me, that reminded me entirely of the triple fatality that I investigated in Qatar less than 12 months ago, August last year, in very, very similar circumstances. Extremely horrific and a life-changing experience, not for those that have unfortunately lost their lives, but for everybody else that was unfortunately involved in that circumstance. As the previous speaker said, it's all too easy organisationally to believe that if we continue to develop and implement policies and procedures, and we continuously improve and implement those policies and procedures, that we will improve our health and safety performance. And you will. But if you want to achieve that paradigm shift and move towards an organisational culture that ensures that people believe and work safely, then 2 very vital components form a part of that process. The first is motivation, and the second is leadership. And what I will talk about this morning is both of those issues, and we'll talk about how those issues affect. And I think the best analogy I can give you is this old saying: you can take a horse to water, but it doesn't mean you'll make it drink. In very simple terms, we can provide the systems and the processes and the procedures that our employees require, but that doesn't mean that they will use them. We need to be able to ensure that they want to work safely, that they see the benefits themselves. And I'm a genuine believer in that people are motivated from within. We need to ensure that we encourage our employees and we encourage the people that work with us and around us to want to work safely. Motivation is a topic that's been talked of for years. In the UK, very often we talk about the first piece of industrial safety legislation. It's a concept that we've always, historically, wherever I've been educated, used the term that the 1802 Health and Morals of Apprentices Act was the first piece of industrial legislation. Does legislation make people want to work safely? Does it make people believe in health and safety? And can we really motivate people to work safely? I couldn't stand here in front of you all if I didn't actually believe that. It's not an easy battle. It's not something that you will achieve overnight. But motivating people is not a myth. Robert Owen was one of the leading protagonists, and he, along with Sir Robert Peel, were key in introducing the Health and Morals of Apprentices Act. But in the 1800s, when Robert Owen owned his mills in Lanark in Scotland, he was perceived by many to be unusual, unique, different, because he wanted to treat people correctly. His philosophy was simple. A machine that's looked after properly, cared for and well maintained, will perform efficiently and will perform reliably and lastingly. He too believed that if you treated people like that, they too would perform in exactly the same way. A very simple and basic concept, but if you treat people correctly and you provide them with an environment to work safely and understand why they need to work safely, then they're more likely to do that. There are a huge number of protagonists to health and safety. There are thousands and thousands of people that have worked through this whole process of how do we motivate people. In your packs for attending the conference, there's a short paper that I wrote, and there's some references in there to 3-4 particular motivation theories, but to at least 14 other motivation strategies that you can research and look up and see how to do this. And as I've already mentioned, I subscribe to the theory that people are motivated from within, not necessarily by others. What is clear, however, as the previous presenter has said, is that we can influence people's behaviour. We can use those behaviours to ensure that we develop their attitudes. That's why behavioural safety takes such a long time. It's not something that is a quick fix. Because what you've got to do is influence their behaviours, help to control and manage their behaviours, but to make them want to do it from within. That's about creating an attitude that it's safe. It's the right thing to do. It's simply the way I do it. And sometimes you have to take a decision, and a tough decision. Only yesterday, I had to remove a contractor from our offices because they turned up without the appropriate safety equipment. I've been waiting for 3 weeks for this particular job to be undertaken, but they turned up without the equipment, and that was a tough decision. I've waited for 3 weeks for this job, but I'm sorry, you're not working in my offices, in my workplace, in an unsafe manner. Please leave. Go away and come back when you have the right equipment, the right tools, and the right attitude to do this job safely. Until then, you're not doing it. That's about creating the right environment. That's about ensuring that they want to do it themselves, not just when they come to Velosi's offices, but when they work in every workplace they do. You as safety practitioners, you as safety professionals, you as people that work within the safety industry, and as managers who manage people, can provide that drive to ensure that that process works. And that's what you have to do. If we date back all of the years through to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's a much talked of concept, and I'm not going to go through the hierarchy in great detail, other than to say, the reality is people are not going to be motivated by self-fulfillment and self-actualization and personal growth if they haven't got the basic life needs of food, warmth and shelter. Equally, somebody that is a wealthy businessman that has all of the material goods in life is not going to be motivated by monetary reward or a bonus to achieve something. So we have to look at what is appropriate for each and every individual. And when this was modified and updated in the late 90s, they added a few more steps onto this process. And what I like about this process is that when you get towards the top, it's about the ability to give back to others. It's about the ability to influence others and tell people. Give back as a professional what you've gained as you developed through your own career and tell others how to do it. And once you get to that stage, that's how you'll start to motivate and help people. I said this morning, it was nice to hear one of my employees. They didn't know I was around, I was behind them, but it was just nice to hear him explaining to a new employee that Mark's one of the best bosses they'd ever had, because he actually says thank you for the things that you've done. And having worked for a boss and bosses that never say thank you, it's always nice to hear. And that for me was a motivator for me as an individual, to hear one of my employees say he actually appreciates what I'm doing. When it comes to motivation, motivation is a blank canvas. There's your hierarchy of needs. That's what you need to do. What works in your organisations might not be the same as what works in my organisation. The tools and the items that we'll talk about in the next few slides will help you drive towards that. And this is another one of those tools. If you want to motivate people and you want to get them to take off, we have to have the foundations and the structure. That's what Hertzberg called his hygiene factors. And if you don't have those hygiene factors, the relationships, the peers, the salary, the working conditions, if they are all wrong, then you'll never motivate people to work safely. It's like trying to build a building if you have no foundation. You might get it to stay up today, you might get it to stay up tomorrow, but it will not be there for an eternity. You have to put the foundations and lay the foundations correctly. And this is where we need you as individuals. How do we make a step change? What do we do? It's hard work, I'll be honest. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. So I can't tell you that what I did in my organisation and what I will continue to do in my organisation will change yours, because you have to understand the concepts of what you are doing and why you are doing it. What you've got to remember is the thing that will trip people up is the huge human motivator is, well, what's in it for me? What am I going to get out of this? And I personally, whilst I've complied with them, I've participated in them, I've developed them. As an individual, I don't believe that somebody should be rewarded for working safely. My reward is that I go home every day to my family, to my children, to be able to provide the conditions that they need in order to try and achieve what I've achieved in my working life. The reality is, sometimes those individual motivators obscure the risk. And in this particular circumstance, it's a magazine that is developed, that comes to IOSH members. So if you're a member of IOSH, you get the SHP online. But if you search back through previous copies, you'll see an article about Frank Carano, which was in the February 2007 edition. And Frank's behaviour was influenced by his supervisors and the people around him. And he ended up in a wheelchair. He ended up in a wheelchair because his supervisor convinced him to do something that was in the wrong order and in the wrong manner and shouldn't have been done at the time that he was doing it. And therefore, the plate, the rather large steel plate that they were lifting at the cement factory, slipped and he became injured. Remember these great leaders. I'm not going to read these to you. You've got a copy of the presentation. But many of these great leaders had one key component, one key element to the way they did it. They believed in the vision that they wanted to create. They created a vision that they believed in, and that motivated others to follow them. That motivated people like me to quote them. Muhammad Ali was once quoted on Parkinson, a TV chat show in the UK. And Sir Michael Parkinson asked Muhammad Ali, why do you call yourself the greatest? You know, isn't it a little bit arrogant that you sit here in front of us all and tell everybody you're the greatest? And he said, the reason I did that is because if I said it often enough, eventually I would believe it. And now you all do. And that was as simple as he kept on saying it to himself to motivate himself from within. And that's what you have to do. Great leaders have vision, they have integrity, they have perseverance and courage. But what characteristics do they offer? This next great leader that I'll show you a picture of is the only person ever to be responsible for me to be put out of work when her government purchased the company that I worked at and closed it down. But that doesn't mean I don't admire her as an individual. That doesn't mean I don't see that she achieved a great deal. And Lady Thatcher was a fantastic leader. She was referred to as the Iron Lady. But if you want to lead your organisations and motivate your people to work safely, then you've got to believe it yourself. You've got to start to do it for you. What you've got to accept is these key concepts here. Each person is unique. Make the best choice available to you at the time. Remember, it's about continuous improvement. So if you wait to get the best before you do anything, then you'll never do anything. If you can improve the safety today by doing something, and then make it better tomorrow by doing something else, and make it better tomorrow by doing something else, then that's continual improvement. Believe that there is a solution to every problem. You might not know it, but somebody out there will. You need to create a compelling vision that has well-formed outcomes. You need to develop a climate of trust and rapport, that people can tell you something, that you will do something about it, that you will feed back to them, and that you will change the issues. And if you can't, you go back to them and you explain to them why. You tell them what we need to do. We can't stop you doing this, but we need to do this and make it safer. You give them constant feedback. You create what we call perceptual positions. You know, get them to put themselves in your shoes and put yourself in their shoes to understand. I call them anchors. They're things that people will remember about safety, that they will always use as a vision for health and safety. If I go back to Ireland, where my family home is, and I go back to one of the organisations I worked in, they will always talk to me about you as the guy that introduced safe driving. You put me on an advanced driving course. That saved my life. I had an accident, but if I hadn't followed your driving, Mark, then, and it wasn't my driving, it was just something I introduced into that company to ensure that we started to get them to believe in health and safety. And we have to find what is the key issue. You can't afford to waste any opportunity to improve things within your organisation. And make sure you develop things logically. Remember the previous speaker's slide of the progressions and the stages of development. You don't try and get to the top before you've worked through those own processes. You need to work through the processes systematically and logically, but you have to have the goal that attitudes are the things that make it. In your handout, I won't talk about these in detail now because I'm conscious of the time. There are 3 particular case studies that I discuss in the handout. One about the filling machine. That was a lady that was scalped, aged 21, by a rotating machine. It was the first accident I ever investigated as a consultant. Kaizen is a Japanese philosophy that works extensively in the motor industry as well as other industries as well. And the third one is a case study about steam cleaning, which shows how we changed something at one of the companies I worked at by doing what the employees wanted. We followed their rules rather than the way I thought was the best way to do it. So if you're going to make safe actions into subconscious habits, which is what they need to do, this is the way we do it. These are the simple rules. I've called them rules in your handout. You have to ask questions. Ask the operator, why are they doing that? Why do they use that machine that way? Why do they use that piece of equipment? But remember, if you're sitting in a restaurant and the waiter comes up to you and asks you the question, is everything okay? Are you happy? Yeah. Almost to every individual, they will turn around and say, yes, it's fine. And then in the next breath, turn to one of their colleagues at the dining table and say, this food's cold. So why don't you tell the waiter? Well, he didn't ask. Yeah. But if there's a waiter, you ask, do you want some more water? Would you like another drink? Would you like another... would you like some salt? Or would you like... You ask a specific question. You get different answers. You need to involve people. You need to get them involved in the development of the solutions and the processes. And more importantly, you need to communicate. You need to communicate regularly. You need to communicate effectively, and you need to communicate in a form, manner and language which they understand. Most importantly, silence is golden. Listen to your people. If you want to motivate them, listen to them. Listen to what they need. And listening doesn't involve you talking. So if somebody comes to talk to you, don't talk over them. Listen to them. Be quiet. Even answering the telephone, or reading a text message, or a BMS, or an email, whilst they're trying to talk to you, will give them the impression that you don't care and you don't listen. So active listening is something you have to learn to do. Reprimand soon and as soon as possible. But reprimand is important that you don't forget that you also have to reward and praise. Yeah? So just because you want to tell somebody that they did something wrong doesn't mean in the same breath you can't say you did this well, but you need to do this also. You need to build on people's strengths, to encourage them to develop as individuals and develop as an organisation, to eliminate their individual weaknesses. And last but by no means least, that they have the authority to do something. You have to let them do it. You have to support them and guide them, but they have to do it. And if they don't do it and you step in and do it for them, then it's you that's doing it. And it's the hardest thing in the world to do, is to delegate. Particularly when you know how to do it. These are some of the techniques that I've found effective in the organisations that I've worked in. They're all in your paper. You can look at these and you can think about them. You can look at the communication medium that you use. So which types of communication should we follow? We're in an age where everything is electronic. We've lost the ability to communicate. We now have a situation where I sit in an office next to all of my employees, and I have to reprimand them when they send me emails asking me to do something for them. Don't send me an email and ask me to do it when you're sitting next to me. Get up, use your legs, come and walk over to me and ask me a question. If you want me to do it, I'll do it. But we've lost the ability to communicate because we all want to cover our backs. Yeah? We all want to make sure, look, here's the email I sent you. I did it. I did my job. But you have to look at every different type of medium. So, communication verbally, email is fine. notice boards, work, posters, booklets, changing the language. You have to look at all of the different types of communication media, because not every form will work for everybody. But you have to get that message right. However, please don't stop doing anything whilst you wait to get the message perfect. You have to do something. So if it's not quite right, you can always improve on it. You adopt an altruistic approach. What an altruistic approach is showing that you care for those individuals. Showing that you care for them and you are concerned about them. We're doing it for you. It's not because I want you to do it. I want you to want to do it. It's about you as an individual. Training, training, and training. Thank you. A colleague of mine at Velosi is a former decorated soldier in one of the armies of the world, and he took me on one side and talked to me and gave me an example when he was looking through this presentation. And the example that he gave me was, he said, if you think about a soldier, when a soldier joins the army, it doesn't matter what army of the world it is. So when a soldier joins the army, he's learned in the first week how to use his weapon, and how to maintain his weapon, and how to clean his weapon, and how to operate his weapon. And every single day of his life afterwards that he remains in that situation, he does that. Because sweat saves blood. The training that you do, you have to continuously do it. Continuing professional development is about doing something that improves you as an individual, but also doing the things that you've done previously to get to where you are, so that you reinforce those good habits that you have. So just because you've done something 10 years ago, when you did your qualification, doesn't mean you can't do it again today, to ensure that you refresh it, to ensure that you look after it, and to ensure that you have that habit in your mind. And you have to do that with the people. But please make sure that any training that you deliver matches the needs of the individuals and the organisation. Because training for training's sake doesn't necessarily solve your problems. And the classic example I can give of that is in Qatar. To go to one of the industrial cities, you have to have H&S training. And everybody has to have H&S training. And I've sat on every single training provider's H&S course in the whole of the country. Every single one of them. And they all say the same wrong things. Nobody challenges them. Until now, where I've started to say, that's wrong, you can't say that. That's incorrect. You need to change it. You need to influence people by making sure that the information you give them is correct. Creating a vision that I believe in was the biggest challenge that I had. What do I believe in? I believe in safety. I believe in health, safety and welfare. I believe that all accidents are preventable. I believe that we can develop the correct attitudes in people. I couldn't stand here and talk to you if I didn't believe that. What you have to do is create that vision for you. And that vision becomes your vision in your organisation. And then you can move your people forward and your company forward. Develop the art of listening. Listening to the audience. Listening to the people. Looking at their reactions. Looking at the things that they do. But don't be afraid. As a competent professional, you have to ask for help. Because you don't know everything. The little quotation I've put in the paper inside your pack says, expert. I'm not an expert. I don't profess to be an expert. An X is past it. A spurt is a drip under pressure, and I'm neither. Resolve issues expediently. Make sure that you take the issue and you solve the issue when it needs to be solved. Don't put it off until you can do it perfectly. And last but by no means least, put yourself in their shoes and put them in your shoes. Yeah? Enhance your strengths by gaining new skills all of the time. Keep learning, because you need to keep learning as an individual in order to drive them to ensure. And think ahead. Plan, plan, plan. Everybody can have a plan, but it's planning that's important, in the words of Winston Churchill. Plans are no use without planning. So, on that note, that's the end of my presentation, and I would like to say thank you.
Our last speaker